You should by now have read the chapter on effective listening, and you should understand that hearing is not the same as listening. Effective listening is challenging, but it has benefits to you personally, academically, and professionally. What I want to do in the next 4 minutes is communicate to you that the challenges of effective listening can be understood as opportunities for effective speaking. I will use the 6 listening components to organize my speech. First off, your audience needs to hear what you say. Unlike some other academic activities, public speaking is a very physical activity. You need to make sure that your audience can hear you. You may have a rich booming voice, or you may have a high-pitched voice that tends to speak softly. I myself have a rather gravelly voice, and it turns out right now I have a bit of a cold, so that is making that part of my voice even more pronounced. It is up to you to figure out how to be heard to your audience, because if they can't hear you, then none of the rest is going to matter. The next issue has to do with understanding. You might have the ability to write wonderful, compound, complex sentences like the ones that begin the Declaration of Independence. Unfortunately, an audience of listeners cannot follow such complex sentences. So, as the chapter says, you need to write for the ear. You need to write simple, direct, declarative sentences using the active voice. Those are the kinds of sentences that an audience of listeners is able to process effectively. The next aspect of effective listening is evaluating. You want your audience to look positively upon you and your message. It may be that at some point in your speech, you're actually going to present an idea that you know that they are opposed to. So what you want to do early on is establish common ground with your audience. You want to let them know that you and they share some features, some beliefs, some community memberships. The next thing, and possibly the least attended to, is to make your message memorable. Some of you may remember the notorious phrase that came from the O.J. Simpson trial when Johnny Cochran said regarding the bloody glove, "If it does not fit, you must acquit." Or you may be more familiar with John F. Kennedy's saying, "Ask not what your country can do, ask what you can do for your country." So there's an entire collection of rhetorical figures that can be effective ways to make your speech more memorable. The next most important challenge to effective listening is interpreting. A well-composed document, whether it's written to be read or spoken, makes effective transitions from one idea to another. When you are composing a speech to be heard, you need to be more explicit with regard to the idea that you're turning to a new idea and then connecting that new idea to the previous one. So it's up to you to help your students, to help your listeners interpret what you have to say by first telling them that an idea is coming up, presenting the idea, and then telling them how to interpret it, what the idea means, or why it is significant. The final listening component, responding, might be the most challenging because it is the one over which you have the least control. A time-honored approach to this is the rhetorical question, where you ask a question which you know in advance that the audience is going to answer in the way that you want them to. That's easy enough to do when you have a sympathetic audience. However, if you have a neutral audience, a mixed audience, or a hostile audience, it can be quite a bit more challenging. So, in conclusion, if you take into consideration the 6 listening challenges and take each one as an opportunity for effective speaking, you can do a lot to help your audience hear, understand, interpret, and respond to your message in the way that you intended.